So the first question that I wanted to ask you both is, what is mitochondrial disease?
So mitochondrial disease relates to a group of disorders where there's a mutation in the DNA or the mitochondria of the cell, and the mitochondria of the cell is how all of the organs get their energy and how the body works. And so if there's a fault, then it can have, huge consequences. Mitochondrial disease refers to a group of disorders, and it affects lots of children in different ways.
The way in which I describe and think about mitochondrial disease is we all have mitochondria within our cells in our body, and mitochondria is referred to as like the powerhouses. So these cells give all our organs the power that they need to work. So all the major organs that you can think of can be affected. They're basically not getting the power that they need to work properly. So again, sort of as a way of looking at it is if you're running on sort of half the energy that you really should be using. So it affects children in various ways, depending on obviously on how they are affected. As I say, it's just like running with a half battery life. So you're not working at your full capacity with the full energy that you need.
Okay, thanks for that. That's really helpful. And how it affects your children.
Okay, so my son Max, he's 14 and he has a mitochondrial disease. So his mitochondrial disease is classified as complex 4 deficiency. It affects Max in every aspect of his life. So Max is a wheelchair user. He can't talk, he can't feed himself. He's fully dependent on an adult sort of 24/7 for all his basic needs. So obviously this involves a lot of work for us as a family, and it, a daily basis, it's quite tough, challenging when you have to do everything for your child. But obviously, as I'm sat here speaking to you now, Max is at school, so that's great. He gets to enjoy his time at school with his friends, and then gets to come home and shout and tell me about how his day has been. Life is busy, it's very hectic, it's also very stressful. It's always a constant worry and battle with obviously what each day is going to bring. The main aspects in the way it affects Max as well, is those things I've mentioned, is it's also affected Max's kidneys. So Max's kidneys stopped working. Max had to go on dialysis for 5 years. And in that time, we were waiting for a transplant. And thankfully, 2.5 years ago, Max received a kidney transplant, which has alleviated those kidney issues, which is just fantastic and has given Max, a great zest and energy back for life. But obviously, he still has these daily issues that we battle with, and just try and make it the best we can for Max. The Rainbow Trust has obviously been a great support to us as a family. They also help with Max's sister, Eva. Eva and Sarah have some great phone conversations. I can hear them laughing and giggling, talking about animals and playing games. It's been really great for Eva to have that support from Sarah. It's nice for Eva to have somebody to talk to. Not always about Max, just normally about girly things and playing and dancing. And also during the COVID outbreak, Sarah was invaluable to us as a family. As of Max's conditions, we had to shield. So Sarah did our shopping for us, which if she hadn't have done, we wouldn't have got by. So Sarah and the Rainbow Trust were absolutely brilliant for us in helping us during this pandemic, and still helping us as we sort of go on a daily basis.
So Hope's mitochondrial disease is called pyruvate dehydrogenase complex deficiency, and that name kind of tells you where the deficiency is. It's in part of the energy system. So Hope she can't eat normal food and make it into energy to use as well as other people. There's kind of a break in the system if we're thinking about batteries and energy systems. How this affects Hope is we knew before she was born that she had brain damage. When she was just a few weeks old, she started having seizures. She is 12 years old now and really is kind of like a pre-walking baby. So she's into everything. She can roll, she can move around her environment. She's registered blind as well. But obviously she's 12 and she's quite big to be, we're still kind of carrying her around. And, in a lot of aspects, she is kind of stuck in that baby age. She enjoys stories and nursery rhymes. the prognosis often for the diagnosis that both our children have aren't very good, but I think I speak for both our kids, Claire, and say that they've not really seen the prognosis and they're living their best lives despite everything that they're up against. Generally, both of our kids, they've got so much going on, but they're quite happy generally.
Yeah.
They, you know, they have the things that they like, and like Max shouts and Hope just likes reading stories and rolling around on the floor. Yeah, so I mean, it's, but like Claire said, you know, we'll brush it up and we'll smile and we'll put all positive posts around, but it's hard, like the daily grind, the sleepless, like we've still got sleepless nights, you know. Hope still sleeps also like that kind of baby. And on top of that, she now has sleep apnea. So she's got an alarm that goes off at night. So we don't even get unbroken sleep. Plus Hope wakes up during the night anyway. So yeah, it's hard. It is hard. Hope used to have lots of seizures, but she's on a specialist diet called the Ketogenic Diet, which has miraculously stopped seizures, and she's not had seizures for 9 years. But the diet comes with its own troubles. You know, she has to take lots of medicines to make up for the lack of nutrients in the diet because it's not kind of a full-rounded diet. She can't eat the rest of the family's eating. We have to test her blood before we make her meals. Everything has to be weighed out to the gram. You can't eat out for a meal, but it is a small price to pay for obviously her not having seizures. And I think something that we probably don't talk about enough to people, like we do amongst Claire and I think we're really lucky to have found each other, because the mitochondrial disease is really rare, and yet we're really good friends. We kind of first met when the kids were like 1 and 3 or 2 and 3, and I remember looking at Max in a waiting room of like a specialist centre and thinking, oh, that's the first child that I've seen that looks kind of like what my little girl's like. You know, they literally were babes in arms. They couldn't do anything for themselves. And I can't quite remember when we struck up a friendship, but I mean, it's a good one, isn't it? We've been there for each other, and we do things with the kids, but actually it's really good for us to do things without the kids as well. And nobody else really understands the situation, you know. Like I've been there with, you know, on the phone with Claire when they went through some really hard times, and I think we've got some challenging times coming ahead, and I know that Claire will be there for us too. Absolutely. We check on in each other's breakfast at the hospice and the hospital, and yeah, nobody else can really understand the kind of journey that we've been on, but we're lucky to have had each other, and we are lucky that we've had the Rainbow Trust. I say the Rainbow Trust was actually the first organisation that came into our lives that was out of the norm. It was kind of the first thing that was recommended to us by our health visitor, and it was before we even had a diagnosis, but it was in recognition that Hope was a small baby. I think she was only maybe 6-9 months old, and she was having seizures all the time, and I couldn't leave her in a room. You know, I had other children, and I had a baby that I couldn't put down and I couldn't leave and I couldn't take my eyes off. And so the Rainbow Trust stepped in, and we had a lovely lady called Sarah. And her role is, I'd say, very different now to Sarah's. So Sarah's role was, she would come around and hold Hope whilst I hoovered in another room, for instance. That's how bad it was. Or quite often what would happen is, Hope was much poorlier back then. Now that we understand her condition, we manage it slightly better. But often what would happen is my other children would be at school, and so they're 6, 8, and Hope would go to school Hope would go to hospital in an ambulance whilst they were at school. And the Rainbow Trust were there then to pick up the pieces, you know, to go and pick up Jordan and Max from school. I mean, that's hard, you know, dropping your kid off at school and somebody else picking them up, but that's what we needed them to do. And Hope spent a lot of time in a hospital out, not our local hospital as well. So the Rainbow Trust would sometimes bring the kids up to the hospital to visit Hope, or we'd have the kids at the hospital and they would take them home. Like we wouldn't have got through. I don't know how we'd have managed without them in those early days. And then things did settle down, and then we had a different Rainbow Trust worker, and her role changed again. Like Hope was more stable, but actually Jordan and Max needed a bit of support from somebody else, and so we had somebody that would come and take them for a McDonald's, take them for a kick around over the park. But of course, all this time they've got somebody that's there for them, that they can say things to their Rainbow Trust worker that they can't say to their parents, because their parents know that they're worried and their parents try to support them, but actually having somebody out of the house. Somebody that was, you know, she was quite cool. Can you remember that other lady? I can't remember her name.
I can't remember her
but
name.
we did have somebody in between, and she was quite young. And like I say, she used to take the kids over to the park, and she even played on the Xbox with them. But that time was kind of bonding time, and it was time for my kids to be able to let off a bit of steam, but also have a bit of a deeper, meaningful chat with people that aren't their parents, and people that could support them in a different way. And so that was really good. And then we have Sarah, and I'd say that her role is different again. I don't even, how long have we had you? It's like a long time. It
must be 3 years, I think.
Yeah. And like Claire, I don't know how we'd have got through the last couple of years without you. Like we were advised to shield, but we took, you know, we were scared like everyone, but we were really scared for our little ones, because a cough or a cold can have, you know, really serious consequences. So coronavirus, we didn't know, or we still don't know what effect that could have on our children. So when we were told to stay at home, we did stay at home, and we didn't leave the house. And we'd go for a walk, but we wouldn't go to the shop. And my husband didn't go to work, and we didn't have anyone in the house. We didn't have anyone out the house. But Sarah got shopping, and in the first few weeks, like, we couldn't get an online delivery. You couldn't ask friends and family to go shopping for you, because nobody wanted to go shopping during those times. Everyone was scared. And yet Sarah rocked up. You know, we used to drop bags on the doorstep, didn't we, with a list and money. We didn't even used to open the door to you in the early days, because everyone was so scared. And then Sarah would come back like an angel with our food shopping. And yeah, I don't know if you realize how, you know, it was actually a highlight of the week as well. You know, like, something different was happening. Sarah was bringing our food. We could get whatever we wanted. Like, it was amazing. And yeah, thank you will never be enough for those times. And I like the way things are now, because we're kind of out of that a little bit, aren't we? We're certainly not scared, and whatever the future holds, we don't know. But hopefully we won't have to go back to you doing our food shopping. But Sarah's role now is really nice for me, and I think Hope likes it, and hopefully Sarah doesn't mind it either. We're still limiting who we have in our house, and we're definitely still limiting the amount of contact Hope has with people that she doesn't need to. But what sits quite well with me and Hope and Sarah is meeting somewhere nice outside. We've got a nice park near us, and I buy a coffee and I sit and have a coffee on my own, which is absolute bliss and a real treat. And Sarah gives Hope her lunch and reads her some stories on the grass. And for those 2 hours, I generally think I'm winning at life. And it's just once a month or so, but I really enjoy it, and it's really, really highly valued and appreciated. And we have to think of something else to do when it gets a bit colder.
So I think all that's left really is just to say, if there's anything else you wanted to make people aware of about mitochondrial disease, or, you know, what families like yours go through, or other charities that support you.
Okay, thank you. I'd say that mitochondrial disease can affect lots of people in different ways, and I think some people can be undiagnosed with mitochondrial disease. It's kind of less heard of and less investigated, and we do know of families with children that are walking and talking. We do also know of children of families who've got multiple children affected, or have lost multiple children. I kind of class Claire and us as like the lucky ones, you know, like, we've got our kids and they're 12 and 14, and I don't think we'd have ever dreamed at one point like that we'd get to those kind of numbers with them. I'd say that mitochondrial disease, the great support that we get, apart from yourselves, we are supported by other charities, including a hospice, but the mitochondrial disease charity is the Lily Foundation. And so if you wanted any further information, then to look at them, and they are a huge support to us as well, and they connect other families. And I think, like, Claire and I are lucky, but actually there are other families that we're connected with as well, and that we've got to meet, and that's because of that charity. And I think that's really important.
Okay, Claire, did you want to add something?
Not really. I kind of feel like I'd be just sort of repeating what Caroline said. But yeah, just mitochondrial disease, it is brutal. But I think if you have an understanding and you can get some support through charities like yourself, and obviously the Lily Foundation that Caroline has mentioned, I think that is invaluable, as it's a pretty tough journey to be traveling alone. And as we've touched on before, unless you're really in the journey, it's hard for people, friends, family. They want to understand, they want to help, but it's really hard to sometimes convey what life is really like, because I think we said again at the start, we try and brush it up, put a smile on our faces and say, yeah, everything's fine. But Caroline will know perhaps by looking at me, or I can tell by looking at her that it's been a bad night, things aren't great. So support is valuable. So the Rainbow Trust, as I said, again, has been great to us as a family. And any support you can get from any other charities, do take that, because as I say, traveling these journeys together makes it a lot more bearable for everybody involved, really.
Oh, thank you both. That was amazing.
Feeling quite emotional now.
Yeah, me too.